Nigel Poor is an artist, author, and photography professor at Sacramento State and a co-founder of the award-winning Ear Hustle podcast, launched in 2017 as the first podcast created and produced in prison, featuring stories of the daily realities of life inside San Quentin State Prison, shared by those living it. Co-founded by Professor Poor with Earlonne Woods and Antwan Williams, who were then incarcerated, have since been released. The podcast now tells stories from inside prison and from the outside post-incarceration, and also now has a studio at the California Institution for Women in Chino. Among its many awards, the phenomenally popular podcast was a Pulitzer Prize finalist in audio reporting in 2020, the first time the category was recognized for bringing audiences, quote, a consistently surprising and beautifully crafted series on life behind bars. In addition to the podcast and her teaching, Nigel's work as a visual artist has been exhibited internationally and can be found in collections at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, the DeYoung Museum in San Francisco, and the Corcoran Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. She's the author of the San Quentin Project and co-author of This Is Ear Hustle, Unflinching Stories of Everyday prison life, which was the San Francisco Public Library's One City, One Book selection in 2022. I've long covered California prisons and related issues for several publications, starting as a young reporter at the Sacramento Bee, and first saw one of Nigel's presentations on Ear Hustle a few years ago when I took some of my Sac State journalism students to her presentation at the University Library Gallery. It's a remarkable story, many stories really, and we're so fortunate to have her here with us today.
Thank you for being here. Really happy to be here. So I just want to note that this presentation contains images and subject matter that some may find violent or disturbing, so please keep that in mind. Okay, so I believe in the importance of fascination, storytelling, in not knowing and wanting to know, in asking questions, listening carefully, in finding ways to humbly insert oneself into new situations, in following the clues, and spending time quietly understanding the new as it reveals itself to you. So I've spent over 30 years working as a visual artist, observing the everyday, and finding meaning in the overlooked and humble objects. And I've done this through found objects, fingerprints, flies, hands, the hair I lost the first year of a tenure track position, tiny writing, dead bugs that hit the front of my car, dryer lint, banned books. And today I want to talk about where that work and following those clues led me. Can you hear me okay? It's loud enough? Great. In 2011, I started volunteering at San Quentin Prison, teaching with the Prison University Project. My colleague, Doug Derdinger, and I were the first people to teach a history of photography class inside the prison. And our students were a group of incarcerated men working on an associate's degree. Teaching inside prison and using photography as a bridge for conversation was incredible. And it reinforced all of my feelings and understanding of what photography is capable of. And while I was teaching, I made a point not only to get to know the incarcerated people there, but also to get to know the people who worked at prison. And one of those people was Lieutenant Sam Robinson. And that relationship became an essential one. It's 2011, and I started volunteering at San Quentin State Prison, teaching with the Prison University Project. And that led me to a box and a story I want to tell you, and how that led me to do the work I do in Ear Hustle. So before Ear Hustle started, I was visiting Lieutenant Sam Robinson at San Quentin State Prison. And at this point, I didn't know him well enough to call him Sam. He was Lieutenant Robinson. And I wanted to get to know him better. So I would often stop by his office to talk with him. And on this day, he had an old box of photo paper on his desk. And I'm a photographer, so I thought, perfect, ask him about the box. It would be a good conversation starter. So he opened the box, and inside were some aerial photographs of San Quentin, which he thought were really cool. And so to make a good impression, I enthused, but inside I was kind of like, these are sort of boring. But then he said, if you like those, wait till you see these. And from underneath his desk, he pulled out an old banker's box. He took the lid off, and I just about lost it, because inside were thousands of 4x5 negatives. And I couldn't see the images, but I had the photographer's instinct to know that this box was important. It was the kind of box you dream of finding, the kind of box that comes your way once in a lifetime, if you're lucky. I was giddy and overwhelmed, and I asked Lieutenant Robinson if I could take the box to my studio and start scanning them. And to my shock, he said yes. He didn't know what he was saying yes to. I started looking at the negatives, and one negative after another was a story, a clue, a fragment. Something startling, something vexing, something disturbing, something very strange, something so beautiful, and sometimes, honestly, something just weird. So I spent a lot of time with that box trying to understand what it held. And I figured out that the negatives were taken between 1938 and 1989 by correctional officers. And their job in part was to document events that occurred inside of the prison. They were creating a visual archive of facts, images that said, this is what's happening right now. But I love photographs because they do something different. They beg a question. Are we reliable narrators of our own experience? Or do we constantly mix fact and fiction? And I tend to gravitate towards the notion that yes, we do. And I don't find that troubling or akin to lying. I prefer to push into the tangled brambles of memory and experience. For me, the tangle is where the fascination of a good story is. The messiness is what makes it real. And all of that made me want to know more than the facts of this archive. I got excited about the idea of finding a way to collaborate with men inside San Quentin. And I thought, what if I bring these photographs inside and together we mess with this archive of fact? We talked about how photographs are invitational, meaning that they invite us to insert ourselves into the image and understand them through our own experience. And I hope that together we could turn this archive of fact into an invitation. I asked the men to spend time with the images, to interact with them, to write on them, to map them with their observations. And by doing that, turn this archive of fact into something personal. I messed up. So these are just some of the images that we looked at. As I said, they're surprising and amazing and beautiful. One of the men in the group named Reuben selected a particularly difficult image to write about. When I saw this photograph, I only saw violence. I could never tell if the man centered in the photograph was dead or alive, and it haunted me. So when Reuben came back with his mapped images a few weeks later and shared it with me, I was astonished. Where I saw a naked, wounded torso, Reuben saw architecture. He writes across the back of this man. Oops. Sorry, there's audio here.
The arms symbolize buttresses attempting to prevent the structural failure of a once proud castle. Encouragement and enlightenment versus indifference and authoritative tyranny.
So it's a little hard to see in the photo, but Reuben has given names to the two arms that are supporting the man's body. The arm on the left in the suit jacket is labeled support, empathy. The bare arm on the right is labeled indifference, tyranny. The torso in the middle was that once proud castle Reuben described, caught in a push-pull between two forces, one benevolent, the other harsh and punishing. The once proud castle, in other words, was Reuben himself, weakened but not collapsed, held up by both good and bad forces around him. Where I saw violence and death, Reuben saw a possibility, beauty, and the freedom to choose. Reuben's experience of that photograph was my invitation to understand the archive in a different way. So that box gave us a lot. Yes, it was a box that contained violent and difficult images, but it was also a box that created a bridge to conversation, connection, discovery, and the opportunity for Reuben to explore his own creativity and experience, and to use that to turn a difficult and violent image into an image of grace and possibility. And at the end of the project, Reuben told me that he could now see fascination everywhere. And that was the ultimate gift of the box and the gift of all forms of storytelling. So I always want to thank Reuben for seeing that. So teaching at the prison and working with that box was another step along the way of the work that I do now. So after teaching, I started volunteering in the media lab at San Quentin. And that's where I met Earlonne Woods, who at the time was incarcerated serving a life sentence at San Quentin. And together we started a radio project inside of the prison. And the radio project was really short form storytelling. Neither of us were journalists, but we were telling short stories about life in prison. I did that for a couple years and I got a little bit tired of it. And I wanted to do something that was more long form storytelling, more from the perspective of an artist. So I asked Earlonne if he wanted to start a podcast with me. And he said yes. And then he said to me, "What's a podcast?" Because obviously there aren't podcasts in prison. So I explained to him what a podcast was. And on October 5th, 2015, we sat down and we wrote out what our idea for the podcast would be. This is just some of the notes that we had. And our idea was that he and I would be the hosts of the podcast. He would be the voice of the incarcerated person. I was the voice of the outside person. And together we would work as a team to narrate stories about life inside. Our big goal was to play it inside the closed TV station inside the prisons in California. So it was only going to be heard inside prisons. While we were working on the idea, I found out about a podcast contest that we entered, and we ended up winning it. And the podcast ended up airing outside of the prison before it aired inside. And when we won the contest, we looked at each other and we're like, oh boy, now we got to really learn how to make a podcast because we really didn't know. It was a huge challenge. So this is where Ear Hustle began, inside of a prison in a very loud and crowded space. We worked together, learning how to do interviews, how to do editing, how to do sound design. And it was a really exciting and challenging time. The podcast launched in June 2017, and within a month it had over 1 million downloads, and it's gone on. We've been working on it for about 8 years now. It has over 90 million downloads and plays now inside and outside prison. So what I'd like to do with the rest of the time is to play some different audio clips from the podcast that really illustrate what we do and why we do what we do. And also sort of addresses some of the challenges that we face. So this first clip is from one of our earlier episodes called Looking Out. And I like to play this clip because it really highlights three things that make every ear hustle story. Earlonne and myself as the narrators, escorting you through the experience. I believe that every good story has to have a range of emotions in it. So when you're listening to a podcast, ear hustle story, you'll hear things that are very funny. You'll hear things that surprise you. You will hear things that upset you. And all of that happens in a relatively short period of time. We also use a lot of ambi music and sound design to help create a three-dimensional experience for the listener, because again, this is all audio. So this clip is about a guy named Roach, who you see here. And the story is really about giving love and finding love in prison. Roach does not like people, but he loves his critters. So that's what the story's about. And this is just a 2-minute clip where you'll hear Earlonne and myself talking, and you'll meet Roach, and you'll hear some of the sound design. So we're going to play the audio now.
So how would you describe him?
To me, I think Roach looked like the original Jesus Christ. You know, I mean, he got the dreadlocks. He looked like he's from the earth. And if he could, he'd probably just be wearing a leaf. And he got this one little thing that he do. He'll just start sniffing on his dreadlocks.
I know I've seen him do that. He grabs his hair and he pulls it in front of his nose and just sniffs.
Why you whispering?
Because I feel like I'm talking about him behind his back. He knows he does it, right?
Yeah.
It's not like he's gonna hear this and go, "Oh my God, I sniffed my hair."
Hey, he'll catch himself. You just be looking at him, be like,
FYI, I do smell my dreads. I put different oil on each one of them. They smell good. They smell like I just came out the dirt, hanging out with roots and stuff.
But you know what though? When people from the outside look at Roach, they be like, "Oh, dude, weird, man. I ain't talking to dude." But Roach is a cool dude.
My name is Renell Draper, but I go by Roach. My relationship with people is pretty strained. I don't trust them. From early on, they have been a source of pain for me.
So Roach is about 40 years old and he's a pretty shy guy.
Until you know him.
When I was a child, before I was removed from the care of my mom's custody, she tried to drown me a couple times in the tub. And then she stopped and she left the bathroom and she was crying. I knew she was unhappy or sad at something I did. I wanted to actually comfort her, but I didn't know how to do it. I don't remember her face, and I haven't seen her since.
So again, that's just a 2-minute piece from a longer story, but it really encompasses all the things we try to do. So you hear Earlonne and myself talking. A lot of that is improv. We have an idea about what we want to say. And, you know, we want to often use humor to have people feel welcome in the story. But of course, this story has a very difficult turn to it. And we wanted to use sound design to sort of prep the listener that something is coming that's going to be very different. So hopefully you notice there's a little bit of silence and you start hearing water dripping. And hopefully in your mind that creates sort of this dark, damp space. And you know you're not going to be laughing. You don't quite know what's going to happen. And then quickly you hear Roach come in and tell his story. And it ends with the most heartbreaking thing about obviously what his mother did to him, but also that he's never seen her again and he doesn't even remember her face. And the idea of not remembering somebody's face is such a complete erasure from your life. I've never really heard someone phrase it that way. The story goes on and other things happen, but again, that's a very good example of what our stories sound like. One of the things when we
So
start,
how would you describe?
that's okay. When we started Ear Hustle was that we were not going to do stories about crime. We weren't going to do stories about whether we thought the criminal justice system was right or wrong. We were going to do stories about what happens once you get to prison. And to do that, we really wanted to concentrate on the details of life, the small things, the overlooked things. So this next clip is from a story we did about a guy who hadn't seen his mother in 10 years, and he was trying to remember how to hug her. How to hug his mother. Something that we do, we hug people all the time without thinking about it. So this little clip is Adnan talking about how he's going to deal with seeing his mother. And when I listen to this clip, I like to hear the little clues in it. We didn't know it was going to happen. We were just talking to him about a visit. We didn't know he was going to get to the hug. So when I listen to this tape, I like to hear the audio that during the interview, I realized something interesting was going to be said. Okay, I'm going to try to play this.
The thing I wanted to talk to you about was your first visit with your mom. And yeah, how did you prep?
So let me get the emotional prep out of the way. I took a lot of deep breaths. I try to choreograph my hug because I haven't hugged my mom in a long time in the cell. But
Wait, how did you practice? How did you choreograph a hug?
so I didn't know because I haven't hugged someone in a long time. Maybe by then it was 13 years, right? So I didn't know if my hand goes around her shoulder, or her neck. I didn't know if it went like diagonally, like 245-degree angles. And then I was like, you know what? I let her lead. Like, this is your mom, right? This is my mom. And I don't know how to hug my mom. So I was nervous about that type of stuff.
Did you actually practice hugging somebody else?
No,
Just like
my cellie wasn't up for that. No, I did not. I just kind of like air hugged myself. And I didn't know exactly like, okay, what do you do? Up? Is it down? Is it sideways? So like, that's what I was nervous about.
He had a lot to be nervous about after 10 years. That's a long time. And this is a longer story. And like Adnan's feelings about his mother, it's also complicated.
So when we were working on this story, as I said, we were going to talk to him about his mom, but I didn't know it was going to come. So when I was talking to him and I said, I want to talk to you about his mom, your mom, and I heard him go like that, it was a total sign that, oh, there's something here. Like, we have to push a little bit harder. So when you're interviewing people, or when I'm interviewing people or talking with them, I'm always looking for those little clues that there's something there. And becoming a really careful listener is obviously important. And so I love to watch people's faces when they're listening to the clips, and I can see that they can cause some real deep sadness, but then there's also laughter that comes too. And I think you need those things to take in, stories that are difficult. And so, as I said, we do like to use humor. We worked on a story about spaces, how people use spaces in prison. And this is, I think I'll have to hit it twice, 1 second. So this is, you're going to hear a man named Artwork talking about his cell and how he uses the two walls, the architecture of his cell, as sort of a place to track his progress and his lack of progress, trying to become maybe a better person. I think, yeah.
I got like a hate corner and a love corner, Well, the love corner is the picture of the people that write you. And I would put my affirmations up on the wall. I would have places in the world that I wanted to visit. I'd have real healthy stuff going on, In the hate corner, I had a list of names, the people I wanted to take revenge on. I had different ideas on how to get back at them. I had pictures of things that I would use to get back at them. I used to get real specific. I used to be like, man, I hope her son come home late today. And lie, be telling her he did his homework and shit. He gonna disappoint the fuck out of her ass. I hope somebody steal her mail too and she don't get her insurance stuff, man. And fuck around and a fire hit, Nobody hates you like a dude in jail. Then the list got too long. I had to knock motherfuckers off the list, like, you lucky motherfucker. Be busy. Be busy whooping his ass. You know what I'm saying? So, and see, when I came to realize in the hate corner, that everybody don't deserve to be hurt. Some people you just scratch the car up or something. You ain't got to penalize everybody with a rock upside the head. You know what I mean? The love corner was like an escape, and the hate corner was motivation.
So I should say we did a live tour recently. So for some of the audio clips, we made animation to go with them. We don't normally have animation, but that's why there's animation here. What did I want to say about, sorry, I lost my track of what I wanted to say about artwork. Oh, so it's always really important when you're doing stories to find really good characters to talk to be the storytellers. For better or worse, we call them our mules. And we're always looking for a good mule. And so artwork was one of those people. And Roach, too, people who can just speak beautifully, right? They tell wonderful stories. We're always, we work on a lot of stories to get ones that work. And often you'll meet someone who has a good story to tell, but they can't tell it very well. And our job is to try to pull it out, but sometimes we can't either. So to make a good story, it has to be a compelling event happens. There is some chemistry between us and the person telling it, and that together we're able to collaborate and make something really interesting together. We work on stories for sometimes months at a time to get something that's compelling. So we had been working on the podcast for a few years, and Earlonne, who I showed you a picture of earlier, was serving a life sentence. But because of the work that he and I were doing on the podcast, his sentence ended up getting commuted by Governor Brown, and he was released from prison in 2018, which was quite amazing. It was really something. And so once he got out of prison, we were able to travel and do work in other prisons, give lectures together. And we had the opportunity to go to Norway to do some work there and visit prisons in Norway. And this happens every once in a while. We will meet somebody who's got a great story, but they're a little bit of a tricky character. And we try not to be judgmental of people, but of course, we want to try to also be honest with our listeners. And so this guy that we met in a prison in Norway, his name was Too Tall Ali. That should tell you, well, he was tall, but it should also tell you something about him, that's what he liked to call himself, Too Tall Ali. And this was his favorite book, The 48 Laws of Power. And if you haven't read this book, it's a book which basically has 48 laws that you can follow to become, I would say, a good manipulator of people, is how I would describe it. I think people who love this book think of it as a way to become just more powerful in life in general. This book happens to be banned in California prisons, but it wasn't in Norway. And so he talked about this book a lot while we were interviewing him. So what we decided to do throughout the story, we just quote different laws from the book. So instead of saying, I'm not sure about what he's saying, we just picked one of the laws to read. So this is a small clip with Too Tall Ali telling us a story. He was amazing. I mean, I sort of fell in love with this guy, and I realized that the 48 laws of power really work. You got to be careful. So this is just a little clip of Too Tall Ali.
If I could trade places with anybody in the world, I still would not do it, because this has been my journey. I've experienced more than most people can dream about. I've traveled the world. All my life has been one big circus, and starting dealing different kinds of drugs. Graduated to be a professional car thief from like age 8 to 10. I've never been lost a car chase after the age of 12 in no country, in no continent in the world, not once.
Law number 32, play to people's fantasies. Do you feel like you could go to any country, not speak the language, not know the customs, but then just like figure it out?
Definitely. I took pride in doing that. At the most, I knew 9 languages fluently.
Which are, name them?
French, German. I taught myself Latin, Spanish. I knew Russian, like Yugoslav, and 2 kinds, almost 3 kinds of African, like Gambia, Wolof, and Mandinka.
I don't know if you felt this way, but it was kind of hard to tell what was fact and what was fiction with him. But honestly, I didn't care. This dude could tell a story.
Yeah, he was what? James Bond, Black Panther. He was everything.
Everything mixed together.
He really was. Doesn't he have an amazing voice? You could listen to him all day long. And so using his favorite book as a way to sort of describe him in more detail was really worked well in this episode. I have no idea. I'd never heard of anyone from 8 to 10 having car chases, but I believe him. I totally believe him. Well, this was in Norway. He had moved to Norway when he was like 6 from somewhere in Africa. I don't remember where. And he had a crazy story. I mean, it was like a Dickens novel, kicked out of his house on a Christmas evening. He walked through the snow and was eventually, another family took him in. Like everything was a really amazing story with him. And he was a survivor. I mean, he hadn't had an easy life. Um, yeah, Tutal Ali. I wish I had a picture of him. So we get a lot of mail from people who listen to the podcast, both from people who are incarcerated and people who aren't. And I love to archive things, so I keep good track of all of our mail. This is just some of it. But before I archive it, it lives in a big mailbox, just like a mail bin before I can get to it. And we have thousands of letters. And we were working on a story inside San Quentin about being a parent. How do you parent from prison? And I remember it was a really long day, and I came home that night after working. For some reason, I just went to the mail bin and I randomly pulled out a letter and I read it, and I could not believe the letter. And so I knew it had to become part of the episode. So the next day I brought it into prison and I asked one of the men we were interviewing for this story if he would read the letter. So he didn't know what was coming. And this is an excerpt from that episode where John, who's a father, whose kids are obviously outside of prison, reads the letter. This also has some animation to it. Okay, so here's John reading this random letter I pulled out of the mail bin. Oh, sound. Go back.
So it's on your computer, right? Okay, so let's use the microphone. So can you go back and we'll play it?
Okay, this is a letter, looks like from a.
It's not gonna.
Jalen. That's my name, Jalen. My dad is in prison.
Where is the sound?
9.5 years old.
There's no way to do it from.
It won't, it says it's not, they won't play it.
Okay, the letter looks like from a.
Oh, can you turn your volume up?
Jalen. It says, my name is Jalen.
Okay.
I don't think that's.
My dad is in prison. I'm 9.5 years old. I really like listening. Okay, this is a
Can you guys
letter,
hear it
it looks
at all?
like from a
You can?
youngster named Jalen. It says, my name is Jalen. My dad is in prison. I'm 9.5 years old. I really like listening to your podcast. My dad does not write me a lot now. Can I get him to write me more? Please write back. Thanks, Jalen. P.S. Can you share this or one of your podcasts, please?
So reading that, like, what do you get? Like, what is your advice to him?
Oh man, I've got tears in my eyes and something in my throat right now. Jalen, if you're listening in now, my heart goes out to you, little one. I don't know what is in your dad's heart. Wherever he is in this system, there are a lot of pressures on him. Please don't stop. Please. Your letter says that he does not write to you a lot, so that's telling me that he does write you some. So the caring is there. Dig deep into that little heart and soul of yours and try to find the best words you can to let your dad know how important staying in contact with him is to you, how much you love the letters that you do get, how much you get out of them. And when you write him back, tell him about yourself. The fact that he doesn't write you may mean a little bit that he's not quite confident about what he can put into words. But don't let that stop you from what you try to put into words. If letters are all that you have, write the best letters that you can as often as you can. And I really betcha that they'll have an effect. And that even if your dad doesn't think that he's a great letter writer, even if he doesn't think that he has something important to say, I bet you your letters are gonna make him think again, make him understand how important whatever he has to say is in your life. What a great letter, Jalen. Keep it up. Please, please.
So hopefully you could hear that. So it speaks to so many things. One, the importance of mail, the serendipity of never knowing what kind of connections you can find. And then there's the actual letter. And then the heartbreak that an 8 or 9-year-old would write this letter to strangers, hoping that we could connect him with his father. And I imagine in his little mind, he just assumed that everyone was that's in prison is in the same prison and that they would know each other. And then asking John to read the letter without him knowing what was coming was really an amazing experience. And we've kept up with Jalen. He's 16 now. We actually just saw him when we were doing our last live tour. So when we go out on the road, we always try to see him and keep up with him. And he's doing okay, not great. He still has a lot of struggles, but I think the relationship that we've built with him has been helpful in some ways. So, yeah. Was mentioned earlier that we are now doing work in women's prisons as well. And we have a studio set up at San Quentin Prison, and we have one at the California Institution for Women, which is down south. And so we spend more time there, especially since Earlonne is out. And they have what they call the Senior Center down at the California Institution for Women. And so I love going to the Senior Center and hanging out with the women that are there. And I wanted to do a story about aging in prison. What is it like aging in prison, and what is it like facing the fact that you may die in prison? It's a hard topic to talk about, but it's an important one. So this is an excerpt from the story we did called "Once You're in the Ocean, You're Going Everywhere," and it's a conversation about the end of life in prison. And this is talking with a woman who, at the time, I think had been in prison almost 50 years. Yeah, almost 50 years. So hopefully I hope this one's going to work. Let's give it a try. This is another.
One thing that I just hope for myself is that I die with all my memories, all the good, all the bad, all the hurt, the pain I have given, all the things I've learned about myself, all the friends, family, every little tiny memory. I want that to come with me to the very bitter end, because that's who I am.
What do you hope your last memory is? What's the memory you want to go out on?
It's just be having my friends with me again. A lot of them I've lost. I would love to see the faces of those that I've loved. If I think about getting out, I think about contacting friends that I have and seeing them again, and just seeing them all going for a swim is my number one. I'd go right out of here into the ocean as quick as I possibly could. I don't care, fully dressed. I don't care if it's winter, summer, whatever. I'd be in the water.
The trip, 'cause I think that's on the top list of everybody. Ocean, beach.
Yeah,
First place people that get out want to go.
that would be the best thing for like a brand new start, because the ocean really is our moon. And the sound of it, it's like a heartbeat.
I was just thinking
evolution.
about it, that it also is very womb-like.
It is the womb, it's ours.
Yeah.
We're made out of water.
Yeah.
And water babies. Almost all the people that I've loved that are dead are there. Their ashes have been thrown. I don't care if it's a pinch, just put me and give me a pinch, because I had an awful lot of friends in there.
Does it matter what ocean?
No, the Pacific and Atlantic, I have friends. I do, and family. My dad's down at Malibu, my best friend is in Cape Hatteras. So, hey, you don't love me.
You're definitely gonna do some traveling.
Yeah. Once you're in the ocean, you're going everywhere.
So one of the things we think about a lot when we're telling our stories is thinking about the commonalities between life inside and life outside prison. And that's one of our directives, is to show those connections. And so topics like thinking about the end of life is something that we all deal with. And it sounds like a scary topic. And of course, it is hard to talk to people about it. But I love the way this woman speaks to it. It's very reassuring and almost relaxing to hear her talk about where she wants to be. And then, of course, we all just think about the ocean, and we can't help think about where we will finally be. But I love this idea that once you're there, you're going everywhere. So I know we're almost out of time. As a teacher and as an artist and a maker, people often ask me, how do you know when work is good? How do you judge if work is good? And so one of the ways I judge if work is good is when I read a book or I go to a movie or I listen to a podcast or I see artwork, it makes me want to go and do my own work because it inspires me. And so I love that our listeners send us all kinds of creative projects that they've made based on Ear Hustle. So we have this Afghan, have this wonderful little sculpture, the nail art. And then one time Earlonne said in an episode that he wished he could see the Queen of England wearing an Ear Hustle t-shirt, sipping on some tea. And one of a listener made that little illustration and sent it to him. So yeah, I think that good work makes you want to do your own work. And so when I see this, I feel like, okay, I'm happy with what we're doing. So that is my presentation, came in under time. So thank you for listening. And happy. Sorry, there are a few technical glitches, but Cindy and I, we did a good job, right? We did it.
Testing, okay.
I can repeat what I say. Okay, so the question was, where did we get the name Ear Hustle? The name it was going to be. I had a friend many years ago, 25 years ago, worked an AA group inside of a jail. And she said she was in there one day and she heard people talking about eyeballing and ear hustling. And I had never heard the expression that ear hustling is eavesdropping. And so flash forward 25 years later, when we came up with the idea for the podcast, I said, I have the perfect name because that's what we're doing. We're eavesdropping in a nice way and we're sharing stories. So that's where it came from. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I have a question. Do I need to do anything? Is it coming across okay? Yeah, anyway, okay, I was wondering that picture of the guy who had the questions about about hugging his mother.
Yeah.
Who did that portrait?
Okay, so the question was, if you couldn't hear, who did the illustration of the Adnan, who we talked to? So for the first maybe 4 seasons, Antwan Williams, who was the third person that started Ear Hustle with us. He was incarcerated. He drew all of the illustrations. Really amazing. There's so much talent in there. He has since moved on, but he did most of our illustrations, and they're really good. Yeah. Yeah.
This again.
Hi,
I can hear you, and I can repeat the question. Yeah.
Zoom can't hear you. Hello? Okay. Hi, this is Michelle. Excellent. I actually worked on the Strategic Offender Management System project for 2 years and went to prisons in California. So kudos to you.
Oh.
Two things. One, has any other organizations adopted your business model for other prisons in the United States? And secondly, I guess that was my main question.
Oh, okay. So if you couldn't hear, the question was if other projects adopted our business model to do this in other prisons. So we were the first podcast ever created in a prison. 2017 is when it started. We get so many requests from other prisons that want to start a podcast. It's kind of amazing. And there have been some other ones that have started. We're keeping a spreadsheet of how many people contact us. I think we've been contacted by over 100. Maybe that's not true. Maybe like 70 places. I've heard of one other who has followed through and actually done it. It's really hard to do. It's very difficult. But we will help anyone who wants to start a podcast. We did a live tour this summer. We came in the month of August, and we did our live show inside of 3 women's prisons, which was also a first. And while we were there, we did a workshop on storytelling. Not so much how to start a podcast, but how to start a storytelling project. And that's what I'm really interested in, is getting storytelling in different prisons. And there's prisons now have a tablet inside that guys can use by this organization called Adovo. And so we are creating, our episodes are all on the Our episodes are all on that tablet, so people in prison can hear it. It plays in a couple thousand prisons. But we're working on a curriculum that will be on the tablet, a storytelling curriculum that anyone will be able to hear. It's like, online learning, but that will be available to anyone in any prison across the country that has this tablet. Yeah.
I'm gonna interrupt. So, one of the questions, oh, sorry. Thank you. One of the questions from online is, where do I get this podcast?
Oh, so you can get the podcast on your phone, online. You can go to earhustlesq.com. It's available there. It's very easy. Can you repeat that? Yeah, earhustlesq.com. Yeah, San Quentin. But if you just put in Ear Hustle in the Google search, it will come up. And if you are in prison, if you have the Adobo tablet,
Hi, you answered part of my question. I was wondering how difficult it was to get approval to do this. And I understand San Quentin is quite progressive in a lot of their programs. So I'd love to hear what
yes,
that was and how hard it would be in other places too.
It was so hard. I started at the beginning of the talk saying I taught. So I taught I was going into prison starting in 2011. We didn't start the idea for the podcast until 2015. I spent a good 3 years getting to know the administration, intentionally getting to know people, to give them the opportunity, if they wanted to get to know me, I could get to know them and to build trust. It took a lot of time. And then Lieutenant Sam Robinson, who I mentioned briefly, who's the public information officer, was an unusual person, very supportive. Without him, I don't think it would have happened. When we got permission to apply for this PodQuest contest, and we won, Lieutenant Robinson had given us permission to apply. When we won, he said, "I only said yes because I thought you would never win." And so, but he's a real supporter. I mean, we're still friends, and he's a real supporter. We had, once we started doing it and got popular, we had, I remember a guy from a prison in Illinois came to visit San Quentin to meet us because he was interested in the project. And he told us that if someone had come to me with this idea, I would have thrown it in the garbage can. But now hearing it, he wanted to start one. So it was really hard. I think we have broken down some barriers that help other people start them. But like working in any institution, you have to find the people that are going to support you. I think, you know, a lot of people would have said no, but Lieutenant Robinson was the right person at the right time. So I thank God for him all the time. Lieutenant Robinson.
Nigel, thank you so
Yes.
much for
Yeah.
the work that you do.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And for this very enlightening presentation.
Yes.